This is the bomb. Most pain, if you have pain, try to eat like garbage. Try to eat a high sugar, high alcohol diet for like 2 or 3 days if you're a healthy guy. All of a sudden, your joints will get worse. They'll feel worse. They'll become inflamed. And when we take an obese person and we get their joint, their body, their insulin levels to stabilize, their homocysteine, their C-reactive protein, these are all inflammatory markers to come down. That happens, Jamie, in about a week to 2 weeks. Their joints are the first things to start feeling better. It happens very quickly. So it's metabolic. That's the joints. Your metabolic, it creates a fire in your joints, in short. If you want stem cells that are culturally expanded, that are grown, true stem cells, you might want to go to another country. That's more for paralysis or disease, things like that. But in the US, for joints, we can do it here with this purified amniotic fluid product. This is nature. We use a natural, nature-based product produced by Ian White, PhD, stem cell therapy, Cornell himself. For all intents and purposes, I'm not even a chiropractor anymore. I gave up my license. I'm a business guy, and I educate the doctors, and that's what I do, and I put the teams together. I have about 25 doctors around the country that I distribute a product to them. The doctor that sells the product to Joe Rogan, this is where it took off. There's an entrepreneur in Texas who owns Ways to Wealth, called Brigham Bueller. People might know about him, and Brigham and I have become friends, and Joe uses this product, and it's now, when he was on Joe's podcast, it's now blown up. It's now in NFL teams. I distribute to doctors that put it in NFL players, and I put this in myself, my family. It goes all around the country, and we've had 0 side effects, 2,000 patients in our office.
Yeah.
So it works really well.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. Today's guest, Jeff Donatello, is a relatively new GoBundance member. He owns 4 medical offices in New Hampshire and Massachusetts and is one of the leaders in the U.S. when it comes to stem cell derived biologics as well as metabolic testing. And he's got a whole backstory. We're going to talk about rock shows and losing hearing and a whole bunch of things. But Jeff, man, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, great to be here, Jamie Gruber.
Right now, you're in Santa Barbara, so you're sort of like a Northeast imposter. You're in the exact opposite culture from where you're from.
I tried to get out of the cold, and we ended up in Storm Central, but we survived this California storms. Here we are.
There you go. Just a reminder to everybody, go to GoBundance.com, fill out an application. There is a community for you. And from the podcast perspective, we'd love a rating and review. It helps us grow the show and the reach and get great guests and all of that stuff. So appreciate all of you tuning in and listening. Jeff, let's start with a little bit of backstory. So we'll geek out a bit on the Boston metro area since I know it so well. But what's your story? You Boston guy, more New Hampshire guy? What's the backstory for you?
You know what? I have this weird background that we should talk about because I honestly just discovered this story. I kind of put it all together on another podcast with John Edwin and a lot of entrepreneurs here, right, listening. And I have this nature nurture thing going on that is very unique. Now, you ready for this?
I am.
I have an Italian grandfather who in the early 40s married a Russian wife, and they moved to China and opened movie theaters. And he was a hard ass. The communists kicked him out in 1944. My father and his 2 sisters went to a bombed out shelter. They immigrated to southern Italy. Okay, my father's 11.
Yeah.
Both his siblings died. It was a tragic thing. They came to the US when he was 12 years old. My father spoke Chinese, Russian, Italian. Okay. And he goes to the University of New Hampshire, marries my mom, whose father played for the Red Sox and was a leader in the trucking industry, a big entrepreneur. He played with Ted Williams. So my background, I had an Italian grandfather that opened movie theaters in China. And then I have a Boston Red Sox grandfather who opened trucking business. So this is where I am a hardcore entrepreneur, and I have this allergy in that I'm allergic to listening to people and having a boss. It doesn't quite work for me. So I've always been my own guy, and it's worked pretty well. And here we are.
I love that you learned that early. It took me a lot longer to learn that. But go back a second. You said it's your father's 2 siblings died in Italy as kids.
They did, of dysentery. They lived in a really tough area for about 5 or 6 years after World War II, and they were sponsored by a wealthy man in Worcester, Mass. And they came over, and he spoke 3 languages. And so my father became a teacher. My mother was a nursery school teacher. I had this white picket fence growing up. My father ended up selling mutual funds. He was an entrepreneur in his own sense, didn't know it. And And we had a pretty good life after he started doing that. And it's been good ever since. I was raised, again, good nature, good nurture. I'm very fortunate to have had the background that I had.
The Ted Williams, the Red Sox player, who was that? Do we know them?
Yeah, Red Walsh. He played for a little bit. He came up not that long. The trucking business, World War II got in the way. He played for about 4 years, but he's from Exeter, New Hampshire.
Where did he play? Outfield, pitcher, catcher?
Catcher. He's a catcher.
Catcher. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's amazing. So you have a very, very interesting and diverse background. You mentioned your father was an entrepreneur, but you didn't know it. What do you mean by that?
Well, he went into a safe profession. He was a teacher. He was my gym teacher. We had a long jump pit growing up in the backyard. I had all access to bow and arrows and parachutes, and it was great. But he just did a job. Again, the W-2, right? That's what he did. Yeah. And he then went on to become an insurance person and realized he could triple his income. And then he had a whole group of people working for him. And he really took that entrepreneurial lifestyle on. It was a great way for him to, he didn't know what he didn't know at the time. So now he's, 78 years old. My parents are both living in Venice and, Florida, and they're doing well.
Very cool. When did he make that transition to the insurance sales piece?
I was 16.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was cool. I remember having the bag phone in our car. We were like the first one in town to have a bag phone. And we went from being, blue collar to like maybe semi-white collar in a New Hampshire town. It was fun.
I just talked about the bag phone. I got my first job offer at my only W-2 really of my adult life on a bag phone. Got the call on the bag phone. So I remember it well, man. That's funny. So your dad pivoted to entrepreneurship. When did you realize he was an entrepreneur? If he didn't know it, when did you realize he was?
I realized it when he spoke at what they called the $1 Million Conference in Hawaii, and he brought us, and he was there in front of 1,000 people telling his story called The Road to Freedom. And it's kind of neat that we're going in this direction, right? He talked about what he did and how he lived in that shelter, how he lost his family, his kid, his siblings, and how he came to the U.S. So with the company that he was involved in, they learned really on that he was motivational. And I think I was sitting in Hawaii looking around at all these other, mutual fund salesmen and insurance salesmen going, these are all entrepreneurial people. And, he told me early on, either you work for yourself, you help people, or you work on things. And I was always like, okay, I want to help people. I like helping people. And that's what got me into chiropractic. We didn't talk about that. I was in chiropractic for 20 years, realized it wasn't scalable. And I always wanted to open my own practices where people worked with me. We had a team. And when I met my wife, Kelly, she worked in Boston in marketing, sharp lady. So that's where we kind of fell into the stem cell therapy world. And it took off ever since then. During COVID, most of the people that had stem cell therapy wouldn't come in because, a lot of older people, they were hiding inside. And we ended up realizing that the world was getting heavy. And we started a metabolic reset weight loss program. And that's pretty much why I'm champion level right now in GoBundance. It took off. We now have 30 people. EOS was an integral part and still is of that. And we've structured our business now where we have everybody rowing in the same direction, and it's taken off. So, all
right. There's a lot there to unpack, but I want to go back a step first just to kind of button up some of the past parts. So really interesting to me. I'm just picturing this. You're however old, 15, 16, 17, 18. You're in Hawaii. You're watching your dad on stage. And it's like, holy crap, this guy is the man amongst people, men, whatever, of this industry on stage, inspiring and motivating 1,000 of them. My dad's an entrepreneur, or however maybe it wasn't those exact words. Was that a moment where you realized you were like, where was your entrepreneurial journey beginning? Was it after college? Was it like, I know I am right now. I want to help people. Like you said, was that at that age, 16, 17, or when did that start for you?
I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I knew my dad was up there. He had a 26-page speech that he was going to read, and he put it aside and just talked. And I was so proud of him. It was really awesome to watch. And I just was inspired by him at a young age. So I think I kind of just went with the flow. And, I just becoming a chiropractor, you work for yourself, right? So you're kind of entrepreneurial. You have to get your own patients in. You have to learn how to market. But it was one of those things that just kind of evolved. And I was always curious. And I always wanted to, be progressive. And what was next? What was next? What was next? I have a serial mindset for that, to always find out what's next and best. And that's why the stem cell world was so intriguing, because it's really just taken off. And here we are.
Last piece before we get into stem cells a little bit more in depth, because I want to get into this for sure. Like, what role did your dad have in your progression from that moment, maybe through college into your first practice?
He just let me do whatever I want. He wasn't one of these dads who, he was just encouraging. They both were. And, you hear all these horror stories of people struggling, and I get it. It's tough, but I don't have that. I'm very fortunate. He was just there to support whatever we did. And it was a good thing.
Interesting. Do you ever have I have this. Do you ever have a sense of imposter syndrome around that point as an entrepreneur? Meaning, like, I don't have that story of like I came from nothing. Your dad has that story, right? Like, two siblings. I mean, I can't imagine his parents, what they went through, 2 out of their 3 kids dying, right? Like, he's got this story that you hear so many of these entrepreneurs have, like, I went bankrupt, or, my wife died, or whatever. But like you, I don't feel like I have that hard luck story. I feel like I'm like kind of la-di-da, wafting through and doing okay. Does that ever strike you? Or is that just me, an imposter kind of feeling on being a true entrepreneur?
It's not an imposter. I do feel it maybe is guilty a little bit. Guilty for having it too good. I try to always be, present and aware of where I'm at. We're walking around Santa Barbara, my wife and I, nice restaurants, and I never want to take it for granted. And I think that's a good thing that's been instilled in me, just because my father, really struggled years back, and we used to have to. He made sure we ate every morsel of food on our plate, and it was because he didn't have it. So I think, I just go with the flow and just keep, I'm very much, I'm always trying to see what's next. It's what it comes down to.
How does a chiropractor, which I love chiropractors. Mine recently helped my back like a year ago, like really bad. I had a bad back. I threw my back out and she really helped. But how does a chiropractor go into stem cell derived biologics? How does that leap happen?
Good question. Networking. I was part of a message board with 200 chiropractors on it. And I was an active person on the message board. You know how you say you like to connect people?
Yeah.
I do the same exact thing. You and I are birds of a feather. I love connecting people. I almost feel like I could be a matchmaker, like the dating world. I love that. I love it when I find somebody, it's just a fun thing for me to do. So I was very active on a message board, and I was active with chiropractors from the West Coast in California, actually, of all places. And California seems to be much more progressive. So they were a little bit ahead of the curve compared to New England. Everyone is reticent to do different new things. So I met some people that were early on in the world of donor-derived biologics. So not taking them out of yourself, taking them from a donor. And that has evolved, and we can talk more about it because we're at a place now where that's super, super effective. So these guys were doing that, and I got to meet some people, and I brought it back and did a lot of workshops on it, and brought it back to New England. And it was not easy. The New England mindset compared to like California, right?
Yes.
If you can see me, I would talk to 20, 30 people like 2 nights a week. And I get this, they'd sit there like this and look at me like, yeah, you're full of garbage. You're full of crap. And that's how it was. And that's how it is. So if you're not one of them, it's really hard to break in. And my first thing was like, listen, I'm from here. I get it. I'm one of you guys. And, it's been a great thing to do.
What's this? But take me through this. You're a DC, right? You've got that accreditation, if you will.
Yeah.
How can anyone do stem cells? Can anybody get into stem cell? Derived biologics, like
therapy, even though it's not stem cells. We can talk more.
Yeah, but like, what are the qualifications you need in order to? Like, you studied up on it. And this is where my ignorance comes in. So I'm honestly asking from curiosity. Like, I feel like stem cells is like a regenerative. Like, you're taking from one to the other. It's an injection. There's got to be some medical knowledge or whatever, right? Like, so how do you just get into it?
Yeah, great question. You have to be a mid-level provider, a nurse practitioner or an MD. For all intents and purposes, I'm not even a chiropractor anymore. I gave up my license. I'm a business guy, and I educate the doctors, and that's what I do. And I put the teams together. So you have to be a mid-level. You have to have injection experience. You should have ultrasound guidance experience. and you really need to know what you're doing. And it's something that takes training, and that's what I do. I have about 25 doctors around the country that I distribute a product to them. And the doctor that sells the product to Joe Rogan, this is where it took off. And you're going to hear a lot more because for those of you who don't know, Joe Rogan has a podcast. It's a little bit larger than yours. But there's an entrepreneur in Texas that owns Ways to Well called Brigham Bueller. People might know about him, and Brigham and I have become friends. And Joe uses this product, and it's now, when he was on Joe's podcast, it's now blown up, and it's now in NFL teams. I distribute to doctors that put it in NFL players, and it really. What's
the product? When you say a product, I'm trying to resolve that in my brain. Stem cell product. Like, what's the product?
Okay, so what happens is we're using purified amniotic fluid. All right, it's a donor-derived, healthy baby, healthy mom, and the mom gives it up. It's a cord bank will then take that product and it'll be third-party tested. And then after it's third-party tested, our lab, Dr. Ian White, Neobiosis, I've been with him for a long time. He actually takes the product and he cleans it up so that it's concentrated with what we call microvesicles. And a microvesicle is, ready for this, little science, mRNA, messenger RNA, and microRNA. Okay, and that upregulates and downregulates genes to help you heal, and it creates proteins. And this is nature. We use a natural, nature-based product to help you. There's nothing more anti-inflammatory and more healing than the amniotic fluid that surrounds that baby. Yeah, that's why the baby comes out and it doesn't have mom's diseases most of the time. So it's protected. Yeah. So if we can inject that in you, it's a really safe way to do it. And the FDA has come in and said, all right, what's going on? It's kind of confusing what they're doing. Really where they're at right now, you don't have to go to foreign countries for this product. If you want stem cells that are culturally expanded, that are grown, true stem cells, you might want to go to another country. That's more for paralysis or disease, things like that. But in the US, for joints, we can do it here with this purified amniotic fluid product. And the FDA really wants the labs to be clean. That's the stopgap in this whole thing. So there's a lot of poor players in the industry, and some of the labs aren't doing the right thing, and they've shut them down in the last couple of years. So the lab that I work with, I've been to it. I encourage all the doctors to go to the labs and see. And our product, the purified amniotic fluid that we use, is produced by Ian White, PhD, stem cell therapy, Cornell himself. And I put this in myself, my family. It goes all around the country, and we've had zero side effects. 2,000 patients in our office. Yeah. So it works pretty well.
Now, the amniotic fluid that you get, you said healthy moms, healthy babies. It's donor. At what point in the process do they become donors? Like, when do they get asked?
Yeah, so they go through a survey early on. And
from who? Is this just like kind of general practice across all hospitals, all births?
Yeah, there's 12 cord banks that work with specific hospitals around the country. 10 of those cord banks work with freezing the product for later. You've heard about where you freeze your tissue. But there's a couple of them that use it for this method and they sell it. So yeah, they raise their hand. They say, yeah, I'll do it. It has to be C-section birth, and they go from there.
Interesting. What's the take rate of a mother that's asked, hey, would you like to donate your amniotic fluid to, this product? Is it 1 out of 20? Is it, no, most of them do? I'm kind of curious what that might be.
I would not know that answer. That's a good question. I don't know. That's a core bank. I would say that it has to be very small probably, but I don't know.
Do you have any sense of like how many doses one mother's donation creates?
I do know that. Yeah, it's about 200. One dose is about one donor derived product is about 200 cc's, and we put 1 cc into a knee, for example.
Oh, no kidding. So so one mom donating her amniotic fluid voluntarily, healthy mom, healthy baby, like I said, C-section birth, can create 200 injections, up to 200 injections.
Yeah.
No kidding. So it's I'm sorry?
If it's done properly, that's the way we do it. I've been told it's 200 cc's per donor.
Wow. So that's a very, very scalable, it seems like.
It is scalable, but there's not many cord banks out there.
That's right now.
Yeah, right now. And there are people that are finding this niche, And if you want to start a business, cord bank's the way to go.
I remember asking this of another guest that we had on around stem cells, and I don't recall his answer, but I'll ask you, I remember a lot of sort of the pro-life, pro-choice movement got involved here, right? Like, wow, these are aborted fetuses, it's harvesting, so on. You said healthy mom, healthy baby. Where is that now, today, modern day? Where is that argument today when it comes to stem cell harvesting?
That was during the George Bush senior administration. And
it shows how old I am.
Way back when, it put such a stamp in people's consciousness that even now people are like, I'm not doing that because they kill babies.
Right.
No, it doesn't happen. It's unethical. It's illegal. Now, does it happen? Not in the US that I know of. You don't need to. There's no need to. Overseas, probably. And that's the problem with going overseas. The labs aren't FDA controlled. So you don't know exactly what you're getting overseas. That's the knock on it. You're not sure. And here, at least, they're on top of it.
So stem cell derived biologics, as opposed to regenerative stem cell, is that the difference? Overseas is regenerative. Am I getting the terminology right?
Overseas is whatever they're doing. It's very different. Everyone's different. They'll take them out of the person. It's called autologous, and they'll spin them up and they'll grow them and put them back in and actually mix them with donors. They'll take your blood and they'll spin it up and have apheresis and take the good stuff out and put it back in like PRP. There's lots of things you can do, and they all work. That's the great thing. They all work. But this field is so new. It's almost like that hockey stick, right? It's just starting to take off. And but I do know that what we use has been vetted out, and it's extremely effective. 90% of our people do very well.
But what's the difference? So what would make me say, oh, I could just stay? Like, is there a difference in the reason to seek treatment, to go to you versus going to Costa Rica?
Yeah, I think that if you had a paralysis and you needed to take, certain cells and culturally expand and grow them and inject them back into the cord, things like that. If I had a paralysis, I probably would go to Costa Rica or Panama. But other than that, I wish I could give you an answer. There's so much stuff going on. And that's why you really have to clamp on to somebody that has experience, that vets people out, and also uses inclusion-exclusion criteria. What do they take disease-wise in that product, and what do they push away with the product itself? So that's super important. You got to be on it with it.
What are some things you need to watch out for in that regard? Yeah.
So the blood. So when the cord banks take it, a third party tests it for 3 weeks, and then if there's any disease, just like our blood supply, the product is thrown away. And there are labs that have kept the product with disease in it, and this is like cytomegalovirus was in a product about a year and a half ago, and people got sick from it. And it's a money thing. It's a money grab. So that's why you got to know your lab. You got to know the people you're working with, and don't just willy-nilly, go and get it done.
When do I say, oh, you know what? This is interesting. I should fly out to Boston and get one of these injections in my whatever. Like, what are some of the common causes for folks to kind of come seek you out?
Yeah, great question. Number one is a knee joint, hip joint, shoulder joint that's osteoarthritic. So everyone in GoBundance has aches and pains, shoulders, right? Those will turn arthritic. So that's going to get the best results in arthritic inflamed joint, because this purified amniotic fluid is super, super anti-inflammatory. The next thing is a chronic injury that's not healing. So if you've had, let's say, a rotator cuff tear or any type of tendonitis or tendinopathy, that would probably do very well. If it's been with you for 6 to 12 months and it's just not healing. But yeah, it depends on a lot of sports injuries. We have people that do infusions that come in for a full body systemic effect, but really joints. If you have a joint that isn't working well, that's really what we do. What's the frequency? How often do I need to do it? Yeah, for most people, it's one and done. For like my shoulder, right? I couldn't do a push-up. I can now do 60 if I cheat, right? Boom, boom, boom. And it still feels a little bit, so what happens is people might come back and do more. 90% of our people, it's one and done, and they get it done. It's all over. And so the reason for this, I guess, is the product is regenerative in its own way, right? It's not a nerve blocker, a collagen injection, or whatever it might be, silicone injection to sort of give you relief for a period of time before that relief wears off. It's going to work now. It's actually going to work to regenerate whatever is
Let's just say
tissue. Yeah, it's healing tissue. And this is where we're at. And it works. It really works super well. Again, if you have people should know this. Doctors' offices they don't exclude and push away people with inflammatory disorders. So if your hemoglobin A1C is high, if you're a diabetic, if you're on multiple medications, if you're super obese and you're just crazy inflamed, you're not going to get results like a fit person, right? Results way better. That's what happens.
Gotcha. How does this work from a insurance coverage referral from your primary, any of that? Does it play in, or is this just kind of like a holistic practitioner? You do it on your own.
So if insurance covered this, knee replacements, the orthopedist would go out of business. The corticosteroid industry would go out of business. Insurance will not cover this. That's an industry. It's 30% of our gross national product. This is the scary thing about this world. We're doing things that heal. And right now our medical world is not aimed at healing. It's aimed at putting a Band-Aid on things, which is why it makes what we do very difficult, because we're up against pharmaceutical companies. So the FDA wants all the labs to have what's called an investigational new drug, an IND going, where they can turn these into drugs. And that's the future, where you'll have more access. But again, it's a drug. It's not a natural product at that point. It'll still help, but that's way down the road. But right now, the cost in our office to do a knee is $4,600. To do 2 knees is $8,600. The average person does 3 joints. So that's the problem, right? Is that there's an investment there that you have to reach.
Yeah, but $10 grand to revitalize 3 joints that are a pain in your ass every day. I'm guessing it's 10, maybe it's 12, whatever it is. But yeah,
11,600 for 3 joints.
I was doing the math on it. Like it was 46, 86, maybe it's like 10, 11 grand. Okay. So 11.6 for 3 joints, right? So for under 12 grand, for $1,000 a month for 1 year, one time only ever, 3 joints get regenerated. And you've had evidence of this, correct? Like you've got testimonials, medical evidence, or whatever of people that have gone through. You've had 2,000 injections you've done, or 2,000 patients you've served, right? So
I have hundreds of testimonials, and I have doctors all over the country. This works, period, the end. Especially if you have a doctor that knows what they're doing. I mean, the other thing is you have to use ultrasound guidance. Our nurse practitioners are trained. Part of what I do is I fly them all over the country, and we have the top people in the world that train them on how to diagnose these problems. So if you do it correctly, you can heal. The vast majority do very well.
Interesting. You said a moment ago about hip replacement, knee replacement. Would this literally eliminate or drastically reduce the need?
Yeah. So I was keeping track. I was up to like 270 or so people that were scheduled for knee or hip replacement surgery. This is people that are scheduled to cancel their surgeries.
All of them, 100% of them.
I had 270 people. I was keeping track in our notes at one point that I gave up on it. They were scheduled. We had a guy that was scheduled the next morning. He came in with a friend to see it done, and they were all set for 6 a.m. It was like 4 p.m. And he canceled his surgeries, and now the guy's had multiple joints done, and he was so happy that he came in with his friend. He was all ready the next morning to have surgery. I'm sure the surgeons weren't real happy about that. But
what's the time to feel impact? Like how long after these injections do people start to feel improvement and maybe see 100% improvement?
Yeah. So if you have an arthritic joint, like my father-in-law has a horrible knee, he walked out. He's one of about 20 to 25% that will see change right then and there. He claims to have had no pain after the injection and no pain since then. That's not commonplace. On average, we're going to get about 60% to 80% better in the first 6 to 8 weeks is what you'll see.
Wow. You mentioned about like you're distributing, this lab is distributing, or you are, to Rogan, NFL players, which I could see how that kind of blows things up. When you say Rogan uses them, so is he doing multiple? I mean, not to get to his back, but do guys like him or NFL players, do they need to continue with regenerative processes, or are they able to do one and done as well?
They're human beings, just like you and I, right? Depends what they're doing. I know Rogan works a lot with jiu-jitsu, and he beats himself up just like we do. So I think it's like anything. The harder you play, the more you pay. And I can't talk for what exactly he gets done. I just know that I get pictures all the time when his guests have had it done. And
but what does it look like? So a guy like Rogan, right? You said he's an MMA or an NFL player, right? So NFL players got a shoulder issue. Boom, they get the injection. Wow, feel way better, right?
Yep.
6 weeks later, they're going at it. They injure the shoulder again. It's like, all right, give me one more pop. Like, is that what that looks like? Is it just as simple as that? Or is it like, you don't need that after that first one, despite the next injury?
It depends what you do. Going back to my dad, horrible shoulder, hurt himself years and years ago playing football at UNH. And we put it into him at age 73, 100% change. Like he could, after 50 years, he had full function in his shoulder. And then he fell and hit it and he wrecked it. And we haven't been able to get him back. So it depends what you do. A lot of our NFL players are probably going to need more just because they're out there beating themselves up. For the average Joe, don't fall on it, don't re-injure it, and you'll continue to heal.
That's incredible. Talk about the business a little bit of this. You've got 4 clinics. You mentioned you've implemented EOS. Where did this become like not in the business, on the business for you? When did you make that transition, or was it always that you were on the business in this regard?
No, we had to. No, it wasn't. Really, what happened was our metabolic reset weight loss program. When that blew up, we had a staff of like 4 post-COVID, and now we're at 30. And we needed management. We needed to have everybody roll in the right direction. We needed to have, again, EOS terms: right person, right seat. All right, did they all get it, want it, and did they have the capacity for it? We could not grow to move into Boston. That's really when it hit. Yeah. Boston, we went from 250,000 people we were marketing to in Portsmouth and Bedford, New Hampshire, to 4.3 million. Right. So I knew that's big advertising dollars. And we have DJs that do the program. It costs a lot. We spend over $1 million a year on advertising. So it's we have to have a management team that's structured to make these decisions. And that's really where we've stepped up our game.
What is this metabolic weight loss reset? Is that like a course? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So we have 10 health coaches. So basically you sign up, there's 2 programs. There's one that you're supervised by the nurse practitioner. And you can do the testing the metabolic testing also. We've had a lot of GoBro people do this virtually. So if you're interested in metabolic testing, our nurse practitioners do another program called Healthspan, not to dilute the question, but you can do that. And that's a full blood metabolic panel. And that's a full hormone cortisol stress panel and food sensitivity panel. My background is in functional medicine. I was one of the first people certified like 15 years ago. And I'm also a clinical nutritionist. So I've taken the best of the best, made it simple. But to your original question, you come in and the average person loses 20 to 40 pounds in 3 months. They meet with our health coaches either face-to-face or virtually. We have all certified health coaches, and they're taught with real food. There's no prepackaged meals. We want to minimize exercise, and we want to turn them into fat-burning machines. And we teach them new patterns of thinking, how to keep stress down, how to eat properly. And 98% of our people lose weight very quickly, but we teach them how to keep it off. We need to teach them new lifestyle habits, and that's unique for every person.
What caused it to blow up?
What caused the
program, the metabolic weight loss reset? Maybe you've said it and I missed it, but why did that take off?
Because 35% of the people in this country became crazy obese during COVID. So we had a crazy market. All right. It was there. And the DJ advertising, we had 5 or 6 DJs that did very well. And we were able to cultivate the DJs, become friends with these DJs. And when you have a DJ that has a vested interest in the program, you can hear it in their voice. And the people, they listen to these ladies and gentlemen that have lost a ton of weight. And that's part of my job.
Like radio, like 98.5, right? Like radio DJs. Yeah.
WROR. Remember WROR?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Sure.
KLB is a big country station. We're on Channel 9, MUR. We're on all the stations. So that's the big thing. And from a business standpoint, we really have to be dialing those knobs correctly. You can spend a lot of money. You have to really target your ROI.
It's interesting to me that that's the avenue, right? Like I just think about today's world, you have Sirius, you've got YouTube advertising, Facebook ads, all of that, even traditional TV commercials are just not, it's YouTube ads, that sort of thing. But radio advertising, DJ testimonials still drove your business.
You're talking to someone that tried to break into radio for the longest time. And I was reticent to do it. And it works really, really well. This program specifically, we spend about $5,000 a month on digital. So we do have to be well-rounded, but our our Google Analytics went up 1,000% since last year. So this just shows you how many people are looking at the weight loss world. So yeah, we'll cross sell if the people need help with their joints. A lot of them will do stem cell therapy too. But the reality is this: when you get people metabolically healthy, their inflammation goes down and their joints get healthy, and we don't have to do any stem cell therapy with them.
That's incredible. You have now 10 coaches. You have, $1 million a month spend. You're in Boston. You've got, this whole system and machine in play. When this popped, were you ready? Was EOS in place? Were coaches in place? Like, were you out in front saying this is going to grow? Or I'm curious what that growth cycle looked like from a customer fulfillment standpoint.
We were not ready because when a health coach is seeing 13 to 18 people a day and they should be seeing 7 to 8 without getting stressed out. See, we were stressing out our staff. That's the big. We still are. Full disclosure. This is our growth season. We're going to blow up even more. We're ready to go into 8 figures, and we right now are trying to find the right people. We need a COO. And we need a fractional CFO, and we need HR, and we need all these things. So my wife, Kelly, is doing a lot of it. And, we're trying to take the stress off her. I'm the visionary. So I have the fun stuff. I get to talk to fine people like you, right? Yeah. And have fun. But it's a lot of work keeping the right people in the right seats.
What was there ever a point at which you felt like, we're overwhelmed, we're not able to fulfill, you're giving money back, any of that? Did you ever have that moment along this pop in growth?
Yeah. Like yesterday, I cut my advertising back in Boston. I cut it back by 20%, which sounds crazy, right? I cannot handle the leads in Boston right now. I cannot handle them. We have about 500 to 600 leads a month, and I don't have the staff because it's hard finding the right people, and I'm paying them big money too. So, all you Salesforce people that got laid off the other day, 8,000 of you, give me a call because it's there. We just have to train them properly. And so we have too many leads right now, and it's killing me.
Wow. What's the cost of the product of going through this?
To work with our health coaches is $2,450. And to do all the full testing and to work with our nurse practitioners and the health coaches together is $4,850.
Wow. Okay. All right. But yeah, I mean, like to your point, it's funny. I would have thought like one draws to the other, leads to the other. So you have kind of an ascension model. So you bring them in on metabolic weight loss, that reset program, and it's like, hey, let's get your joints healthy. We can push you right over to our stem cell. But you're saying that they're sort of two separate businesses in that regard, or do you see some crossover?
There is some, about 5%, 2 to 5%. But here's what you want to know. And this is a great thing. If you want a little, Brad Lee, if you listen to Brad Lee, he was on your show. He has a dropping bomb. This is the bomb. Most pain, if you have pain, try to eat like garbage. Try to eat a high sugar, high alcohol diet for like 2 or 3 days if you're a healthy guy. All of a sudden, your joints will get worse. They'll feel worse. They'll become inflamed. And when we take in an obese person and we get their body, their insulin levels to stabilize, their homocysteine, their C-reactive protein, these are all inflammatory markers to come down. That happens, Jamie, in about a week to 2 weeks. Their joints are the first things to start feeling better. It happens very quickly. So it's metabolic. That's the joints. Your metabolic, it creates a fire in your joints, in short.
So it's interesting to me from a wealth perspective, as we kind of pivot a little bit. And if there's anything else you want to wrap up on this spot on the stem cell or metabolic weight loss program, go for it. But I think about, at GoBundance, we talk about horizontal income, right? Building passive income streams and all of that. And I feel like sometimes we get a little too obsessed with that and ignore the fact that a really good vertical is what allows you to leverage horizontal. In other words, make $1 million, $2 million a year, and you dump half or more of that into some passive investments, even as an LP. Now you're starting to build like that passive income and wealth, but you got to have that big vertical at some point, or you have to have sustained vertical, if you want to call it that. You can make that vertical somewhat passive, but for the most part, you got to be involved in some way, I think. And then at a certain point, you could say, okay, I'm out, I'm selling it, and I'm just going to ride the wave of all this. Tim Rohde does that. I take my investments every month. How have you done that? Because and maybe I'm missing. You said like you got to go GoBundance champion because of this metabolic weight loss reset. This sounds like your new money to some extent, right?
Listen, my friends know I went through a divorce and I was dirt poor. I had to borrow money from my parents 3 years ago. I have no problem saying that. But to answer your question, now that we're starting to get back into it, I learned about this thing called syndication.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that freaking word meant. Joining GoBundance, I learned about syndication and, what do we do with the money? And we would have put it maybe into blue chip stocks or something. And right now we're trying to find people that we would passively invest in that we can trust. And that's what it comes down to. Do you trust the person? And my whole thing is this: I'm trying right now to be altruistic. And, if you have an issue with your body, I can help you. And you can either fly in, or if I know someone close to you, I will refer you to that person. And by exchanging these relationships, I'm building trust with people that I can now say, hey, you want 25, you want 50, maybe 100 grand for this project. And that's what we're going to be doing this year coming up. We're going to start small. And if it was Monopoly, we're going to buy a little bit of those greenhouses and not start off with the hotels.
I like that. You mentioned about trust. Do you have any other advisors or vetting practices or anything like that to figure out where you're going to place your money? Is there a specific silo? Is it real estate, businesses, anything in between? Or, what's your box?
Yeah, right now I don't have that. I think it's GoBundance. The reason I joined GoBundance because I'm kind of an island up here in New Hampshire, and I'm trying to meet people like yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. So I really don't. I have to be trusting. I've met some really great people in Philly that I'm starting to get to know and trust, like John Edwin and people like that. It's been a great thing. And that's going to be my learning process. And I'm not jumping in until I get to know who I'm working with.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. You mentioned a divorce. Do you mind going through that, or is that something you'd rather not touch?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's all good. It's part of the journey.
Yeah. When you look back, how long ago was that, and how long were you married?
Yeah, I was married. I met Kathleen. We have two wonderful daughters with her, 25 and 23, Mia and Liddy. We met when we were 19 at Springfield College, and I was with her until I was 44 years old. So a long time. And then, you move on, you start to outgrow each other, and we moved on, and it was tough, like anything, but I was lucky enough to meet Kelly fairly quickly, and we weren't she was divorced 2 years prior. We weren't looking to jump into anything. So we dated for a year or two, and then I brought my 20-year-old cat into her condo, moved in, and that was it. So, so it's been great. She's a Reiki master. She had a holistic health practice herself after being in marketing. So we had these parallel professions that were it was like kismet. And we get along pretty well right now. It's a great thing to be with her.
Can you recall, and maybe you had to go through therapy, I'm not sure for this, and again, answer whatever you want to here, but can you recall a point at which maybe the diversion from each other, or like with you and your ex-wife, like, because I always want to know this, as like, I'm 12 years married, I got kids, we're in it, marriage seems strong and all that, but there's so many people that I hear of that get to a certain point. It's like, man, you married 20 years and now, or 30 years and now it goes away. Like, was there a point that you can go back to that you look at, or a period of time where you started to notice, maybe not big at that moment, that little shift that was the beginning of maybe a gap widening between you and your ex?
Good question. This is like therapy here. All right. For the whole world to hear. Okay. Well,
this is adding value, honestly, because I think there's a lot of guys that wonder this, and I'll ask a follow-up question after, but I'm curious if you recall something.
No, I got an answer. We get into the world of triathlon. All right. And we owned a race called Pumpkin Man. It's a half Ironman, had 1,000 people that did it. I also owned Cedar Summit, which, if you look it up, race to the top of Mount Washington. Jesse Itzler, that's where he stayed on the mountain. I actually sent people up that. It's like an Ironman level race to the top of Mount Washington. Anyways, we get into this world of triathlon, and we did a lot of racing, and it was like all encompassing. And we were, I think, tied up. I've done over 100 races, and it was like our whole world was swim, bike, run, and those people who tend to be a little bit egocentric in that world, right? So I think that was our connection, and that's kind of all we ended up having as we grew a little, get a little bit older. And then, people decided to go in other directions, not me, but new people. And I had to sit down, and one day I remember going, am I happy? And I was like, you know what? I'm a happy person, but looking back, between you and me, I sing, I dance, I laugh. I'm always trying to make Kelly laugh. And I didn't do that in my former marriage. And people tell me consistently in the last 7-8 years, they said, you're a different person now. And I was kind of in a box, I think, before a little bit. And, you meet someone when you're 19, that's all you know. And you try to grow together, but, you have a family, and then your kids are in college, and things change and you move on. And I've always been lucky enough to be adaptable, I think, and
Sure.
Here we are.
So it's interesting to hear that with your new wife, people are seeing you as a different person. Like the weight of whatever this prior marriage was off of you, and you're lightened up and loosened up and everything like that. What's next? So, I mean, like you've grown this business. You're now starting to build wealth and grow and find ways passively to put money in. You're in this new marriage. It's fresh. I don't know how new, but newer marriage. It's fresh. You're aligned. You're in a better place. People are seeing this energy in you they didn't see before for you. So now what do you put out there for 5 years from now? Like if you've had this big pop and you're in this major growth mode, is it like, just ride it, baby? Or do you see new possibility when you've gone through that many major changes? And let me give you a little context. So I'm reading this book right now called 10X is Easier Than 2X, right? Really, really good book. And it talks about really how there's the Pareto's principle of 80-20, right? 20% of the things you do gets you 80% of the results, right? So you have to really target that 20, and your 10X growth moments come when you're fully in that 20 and you get rid of the 80. And I feel like you've done that in multiple fronts: your business, your marriage, your relationship, your wealth. So you're 2 months into GoBundance at this point. Give me a review, your experience in membership so far, good, bad, or otherwise.
It's been amazing. And I'm not just, throwing that out there. The people have been so open to connect. I feel like I've finally found people like me, that is I'm into adventure and health and just communicating with people. So a great thing, your podcast, I listen to your podcast, and then I have access. I actually call these people up and they talk to me, right? I might have mentioned you can't do that on Joe Rogan. Right. And so I think that everybody's just been so open. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about joining, man, it's what you put into it though, right? You have to, it's all about that. And like I said, I love talking with people. I have a list of I'll probably talk to 40 people already, and I've had really good conversations. I'm excited. They're like my friends already. They are my friends. 3 or 4 of them I'm really close with, and it's kind of weird to see that happen so quickly.
You're getting adopted by the Philly tribe, it sounds like. How'd that, just because of John Edwin?
I think so. I don't know. I went to one of their meetings just to see what it was all about, and it was like this crazy group of people. I'm like, who are these guys? And at the end, I gave him my American Express card and dropped $15,000. And my wife's like, what are you doing? I said, you know what? You know how I'm all about fire, aim, ready? Well, I just fired. And so far it's been great. So thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Have you met some of the Boston guys local to you?
I have. Justin Jarbo runs that tribe. Yeah. It's been really difficult with meeting up. And I just haven't really, we're in the process of doing that right now. So yeah, that will happen.
I love it, man. I love it. All right. So you're a couple months into GoBundance. I love your story overall. What else do we need to know, if anything, about your business, about what you do, how to get in touch with you, how to reach out, how to learn more about all of the different things that you're into, the metabolic weight loss reset, stem cells, all of that?
Yeah. I mean, if you're having issues with weight, or if you know somebody or love somebody that has problems with weight, definitely call me. I can give my cell phone out here. Is that okay? I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, go for it.
So if you're having issues with weight, that's one thing. If you want to look into metabolic testing, I have distilled it down where we can do it virtually in a really great way, and get it done, talking either Zoom or over the phone. But if you're interested in regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy, I can hook you up with someone local, maybe if there's a good person, or you can fly in. So 207-451-7438 is my cell. Feel free to text me, call me. If you go to centerforwell.com, that's a great way to see the website. And I think between those two things, if they're still listening to this podcast, that's a great way to connect.
Absolutely. 100%. I got to ask you a question out of the GoBundance card game to end this. And the question from the 8 of diamonds is, what is your biggest failure or greatest failure? And what did you learn from it?
It's funny. I've heard this question before, and I thought to myself, I was on a walk once. You asked this question of another guy, and I was like, how would I answer this question? I think it was this. I think it was when I was not doing well post-divorce and I moved to a new state. I took a job, as I alluded to, with a pharmaceutical company as a pharmaceutical rep, selling this product that a lot of people in the triathlon world, they wanted. And it pulled me away from my core practice of what I was doing. And it decimated my practice. It was good and bad. I should have never tried to do something that wasn't in my lane. And I learned very quickly that it was not for me to work for other people. But I shouldn't have gone there. But who knows? That's how you learn. So yeah, was it a failure? Yeah, I got fired. But my practice pretty much doubled the month after I did. I was able to focus back on what I was, my true self, right? I was able to get back into that.
Man, that lands with me right now. I'm going this 2023, the move into 2023. My whole thing has been about that. Like I do all these different things. And it's like, they all kind of get nudged along, versus distilled focus and really kind of going at it. So when you say that actually, I put myself in your shoes and say, that's like a sign from the universe, like get focused, right? Like to your point, it might be like, well, I'm giving up this income stream over here by selling pharmaceuticals. Like it could be beneficial and then this will be fine over here. But when you gave that up and focused in, you saw all the growth that you've seen. Yeah.
Know you, slow down to speed up. That's my biggest thing I've learned from my wife. She says, slow down, Mr. Jeff. This is what she says. Slow down to speed up. I want things to happen like this. And you have to slow down, distill down what you're good at and go there with it.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, I'm glad I'll get to meet you in Tahoe. I appreciate you jumping on and doing this. And man, this was great. This was really informative. And I hope you get a lot of people reaching out to you for sure. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you.